Welcome to Barnes & Noble Tribeca, Brad Meltzer and Josh Mensch.
Okay. I'm going to start with a couple things that I need to say first, which is thank you for coming and risking your lives at our Super Spreader event. We do appreciate it. I will tell you, I spent most of December, not most of December, the beginning of December with COVID, which was great. That's our Christmas tradition in our house. And tonight was supposed to be, it is the Michigan National Championship we thought was going to be tonight. Michigan did not make the championship. Go Blue! That's right, thank you for that. And if Michigan had made the championship, this would have been the fastest signing in all of history. It would look like this. I'm going to recreate what I was planning, which was going to be, we won World War II, good night everybody. And that was going to really, truly be the end of it. I brought a couple things that I do want to, all jokes aside, and a couple people that need to be thanked. And the first one that I know, because I didn't even write his name down, is sitting to my left, your right. Josh Mensch is, let's hear it for Josh, please. He is, obviously, I think these books are a perfect merger. Josh taught me how to write history. His research and his writing are impeccable. He is the reason we are here today. And I hope what I taught him and when we work together is that we merge my love of thrillers and his love of getting things right. And I think that these books represent those two sides of us. And I love the fact that I get to work with him. We work together on Lost History. And Mary, I know you're here somewhere, but his amazing wife, hey, there's Mary. They are part of my family. And I will tell you and embarrass him by saying that when I first met Josh, I loved him so much that I wanted to set him up. And Mary, I didn't know that he was dating his soon-to-be wife. And that's how much I love him, as I was willing to find him a bride, which is what I can say. But I love that they're together now. Their marriage is happy. I want to report that to all of you. They have 2 great kids. And we wouldn't be here without him. The other people I just want to thank is Catherine and Bob Miller from Flatiron who are here. And I have Aileen does our amazing publicity, Sharon Rosenblum, and I'm not sure if you're here, Olivia. You warned me you were going to be coming. But Jody Reamer and Chris Eliopoulos, who we do our kids book with. Chris is here too, so if you have kids books, this is a double signing for you. Let's hear it for Chris. Jay Mandel is here, who is the agent extraordinaire who brought us, and I have to say a huge happy birthday to Anthony Leone. And my friend Anthony, who, let's hear it. By the way, he just clapped for himself. He was the first one to clap for himself. I brought you, Anthony, you thought I was bringing nothing. I brought you this lemon naturally flavored ice slice cake for your birthday. And Joey, I see, is sitting next to him. So this is yours. You can claim this with your, anyway, I love you. What we want to talk about, and one of the people that I want to end with is, before I get to my family, is Jill Neeram, my original agent who passed away last year. And this is always in her honor, because I only sit here, I said, for Josh and because of Jill. So I love you for it. And miss her every single day. And just, of course, need to thank my family, who are I see them sitting here. We have a minion over here. And my sister's here, and uncles, and the Katzes, and I see Meltzers, and I love you all, and I appreciate you always coming for this. And one of the things I also, I just still miss my parents. And we've had a lot to celebrate in my house over these past few weeks. My daughter got into college, and we have all this stuff, but I still miss them. And when we do an event in New York, it's still nothing like them, which my dad would come up to the front and hold court and be the biggest pain in the ass that Barnes & Noble would complain about. But I love them. And there are camp friends here, and high school friends here, and law school friends here, and I see you all, and friends of my son, even the parents of my son's college roommates are even here, I see. So the mishpucha grows, and I love you for it. So very quickly, I'll talk about the book, and then, trust me, Josh is far more interesting. Even Larry's here. He's wearing the Michigan hat. I didn't see you. So this story for the Nazi conspiracy came about. I found this story. I don't think the internet is good for much these days, but it is good for obscure information. And I found this story. It was like a page or, half a page story about this plot to kill FDR and Churchill and Stalin at the height of World War II, and a triple assassination attempt. And I remember sending it to Josh and saying, we got to figure this out. Is it real? Did it happen? What happened? And we dove into it. And the story begins with, just to set the stage, in 1943, the big three are meeting for the very first time together. Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt are going to go to Tehran, Iran, of all places, because Stalin demands that they come there. That's the place he picks. And there's security there. The embassies are there for the British and for the Soviets. And it's also in the desert. He feels like they'll find secrecy, which is wonderful for him. He thinks is a good idea. And when FDR gets there, he's like, oh, everyone wants to see the president. The president of the United States is coming to Tehran, and here comes the motorcade. It's coming down the center of the city, and everyone's craning their neck and they're waving. And what they see, though, is the guy who's waving back, and they don't know this, but it's not the president. It's actually a Secret Service agent who was the decoy. And the real FDR is in another car, a beat-up sedan on the outside of the city, and he's racing through the side streets of the city because they're worried. He's ducked down and hiding in the back of a car because they think someone's going to kill him. And I just ruined chapter 1 of the Nazi conspiracy for you. That's chapter 1. That's free. But what was fascinating is Josh and I were committed to figuring out, the end of that story, right? Who's trying to kill him? Is it real? Did it happen? How did it happen? Why? Who's he hiding from? Who's the person that they're worried about? And that led us on this entire tale that you're going to see in the book. I'll talk just very, very quickly. You'll see people that you've never heard of. You'll see Otto Skorzeny, and he's a Nazi who is basically a special operations guy. And Hitler brings all of his top special operations fighters to the Wolf Slayer, to his secret headquarters. And he lines them all up in a big room, shoulder to shoulder. And then Adolf Hitler asks this question as a test. He says, what do you think of Italy? And all of them will quickly start kissing the butt of the boss and saying, oh, Italy's great, and they're on our side, and we stand strong together with them. But what happens, and Otto Skorzeny does, is he shouts out above everybody else, and he says, I'm Austrian, my Führer. And it's a gamble by Otto Skorzeny, because he knows that, of course, that Hitler is Austrian, too. And what he also knows is that if you're really from Austria, you actually have a deep resentment toward Italy, because Italy during World War I took a piece of Austria and never returned it. And so in that moment, Hitler looks at Otto Skorzeny and is like, you're my guy. And he has his guy. And he sends him on, I won't ruin the scene in the book, but he sends him on a secret mission that you will not believe when you read in the book. It's so crazy that Josh and I asked Bob if he would pay extra money so that we can put a photograph of Otto in the book at this moment, because I was like, no one's going to believe this actually happened until they see it. And my oldest son is reading the Nazi conspiracy right now. I don't know if it's Josh. And he looked at me and he said, I got to this part with Otto Skorzeny. He's like, I'm like, yup. And he's like, Dad, is this true? I'm like, yup. And he's like, is this guy real? I'm like, yup. I'm like, turn the page. There's a picture of him. And he turns the page. He goes, this really happened? And so all I say is, Bob, the money you paid for that photograph finally impressed my son. And that was worth all the hundreds of dollars that it was for. So, and you'll see these incredible stories. But to me, what the core of this book is you'll see also a Nazi rally that takes place. We always think when Charlottesville happens and when you see Kanye West shoot his mouth off using his celebrity for horrible things, we kind of wring our hands and we say, oh, I can't believe that's happening here. And the truth is that, in full credit to Josh, he found all of this stuff. There's a Nazi rally that took place in Madison Square Garden in World War II. 20,000 people showed up here in this city to cheer. There's a big banner of George Washington. You'll see that in the book, too. And he's surrounded by swastikas. And the first speaker of the day says that if George Washington was alive today, he would be friends with Adolf Hitler. And, celebrities like Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh used their celebrity to spew venom at the Jewish people. And these stories, World War II didn't happen that long ago. If you look it up, Anne Frank and Barbara Walters and Dr. King were all born in the same year. And we tell the stories of one of them as if they live in black and white and another of them as they just died and live in color. But it's not that long ago. And the reason we tell these stories in the book, and you'll see the context of the Holocaust, is because the Nazi conspiracy is not just there to entertain you or even to inform you, but it's there to warn you. And to warn you that if you don't use your voice and speak up, you relive this history. And we should never be surprised. And all it takes is just good people being silent. We love to blame the war on Adolf Hitler, but the Holocaust, as historians have pointed out, did not start with death camps. It starts with slogans and propaganda and rallies and book bans. And if that sounds familiar to you, it should. That's where we're still fighting Nazis in 2023. And so when you see a group of people who are pointing at another group of people and saying, those people are the reason that we have problems today, those people, that's the code word. And sometimes, obviously in World War II, it's the Jewish people, but sometimes it's the black community and the gay community, the immigrant community. When you see those people, you have to stand up and say no, and you have to say enough. And to me, that's what the book is about as well. So I'll turn it over to Josh, and then we're going to open up the questions. But sorry for rambling so long.
Okay, can everyone hear? Okay. So I'm going to keep my remarks very brief so that we can get to the Q&A, which is always the more fun and interesting part. But I do want to say some thank yous. I want to thank everyone here at Barnes & Noble for hosting this event. Kevin, thank you for what you've done. I want to thank everyone at Flatiron Books. Brad mentioned some names, but I'll say a few again. Lewis, who I don't think is here, and Catherine, Marlena, of course, Bob Miller, who has supported us so much over the past, oh, there he is.
We talked so much about you, and we didn't even know you were going to be late. Good stuff. It was all nice.
So thank you so much. But really, the thanks is to the whole team there. So many people who work so hard to support our books and help us. I want to thank Aileen. Thank you for all you do. I want to thank Lisa Grubka, my agent, who is here. Thank you, Lisa, for everything. Can't see you right now, but no, there you are. Is Benjamin Deal here? No. I wanted to thank our researchers. We had a German-speaking researcher and a Russian-speaking researcher for the sort of specialized research that this book required. I thought Benjamin might come tonight, but they were fantastic. I really enjoyed working with them. I want to thank this guy right here, Brad Meltzer. Literally, it was about 6 years ago, and I literally got a call out of the blue. Brad and I had worked together once on a TV show, had remained friends, but hadn't really been in touch. Calls me out of the blue and says, I got to talk to you. And he said, I said, Josh, I promise this will be the strangest phone call you'll receive today. And that's a pretty good intro. So I was very eager to hear what it was. And he said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And, you know, here we are 6 years later, and we've done 3 of them. So thank you, Brad, for that phone call. Pamela Mensch is here, who was a great reader and gave great feedback on this book. I really appreciate it, Pam. All my other friends and family who came to support. Finally, I want to thank Mary, my wife, who you, I guess, already heard about a little. You know, when we were writing this book, most of it was right in the heart of the pandemic, and Mary and I and the kids had relocated upstate, and we're in quite an isolated situation, barely seeing anyone else. And there was one winter in particular, snow on the ground, these dark, cold days and nights. We weren't really seeing anyone else, and under a lot of stress. And I was just in the depths of studying Nazi Germany, the horrors of World War II, atrocities, crimes against humanity. It's a pretty dark place to go, and it can affect your soul. And Mary, thank you for enduring that. I love you. Thank you. Sorry. And that's really all. I also want to say just that, these books, we try to have fun with them. We try to tell fun, engaging stories. But as Brad said, it's also about something else. And it's all about, the story always serves the context of the history. And we really care about it, and we try to get it right. And we try to honor the history, which is, in this case, a tragic history with many, 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 many victims. And we really want to honor that in our storytelling and hope we do justice to it. So they're labors of love. We hope you enjoy the book. And, of course, now we want to hear your questions.
Yeah, and you can ask. Oh, I see that. Go ahead. We can get you a microphone. If not, we can read it and shout it out.
What in this project or your previous ones have you guys most, if not argued, strongly disagreed over?
Ooh, that is it. We haven't heard that question before.
We've heard all the questions, so why do we hate each other?
I can't think of a real, true disagreement.
Yeah, no, that's why I pointed to you. I was like, it's interesting. We actually, I do think I'm a novelist by, for decades, and I write alone. I mean, I have an editor, but I write alone, and then I work with Chris, who's my partner there, and Josh and I are partners here, and it's truly I don't think you work together. Some people may have, the animosity may be part of the creative process. It's not for us. I feel like we do best when we're on the same page, and when we start the book, we always okay, we have this titillating plot, right? There's a plot to kill Churchill, Stalin, and FDR. That's the sell point, right? That's what Bob says, okay, that's a good idea. But the very first thing, our first conversation is always, what's the book really about? And I'm telling 3 books in a row, I feel like we've always been lockstep on, this is about leadership when the country is divided, is what the Lincoln book was about. George Washington was about, the leadership's not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. We knew that leadership was in question at that moment in time when the book was coming out. And in this one, we knew we didn't know where the war was going to be. We didn't know about Kanye and all this stuff, but it was what we thought were heights of anti-Semitism during the last administration, and obviously was just getting worse. We didn't even realize, but I feel like there's nothing we've had. I can't even think of one. Now you've cursed us because there's going to be one. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name's Bradley. Hello. My name's Bradley. I'm a huge fan.
I've seen you before.
Oh, okay.
I know.
As I said before, I'm a huge fan of Decoded, and so my question is, the Decoded episodes, even though they basically told a story for television, in a way, a lot of them had a mysterious ending. Like, a lot of them didn't really have that concrete ending. And I was curious, because these have, a full-length story in a way, were you looking for the right time to write your first nonfiction novels, or was it just, right time, right partnership?
Yeah, no, thanks, Bradley. So for those who don't know, we did a show called Decoded many years ago, which led to Josh and I meeting for Lost History. And I really love doing Decoded, but it's interesting. That was a conspiracy show at a time when conspiracy just had a very different meaning, right? I know it sounds crazy to say, that's when conspiracies were fun. They're not anymore, not to me. One of my great regrets in life, truly great regrets, is on Decoded, we gave airtime to Alex Jones. He wasn't who he was now. He wasn't as crazy as he was. We would have never done that. But he was obviously some fringe guy who had a videotape we wanted to air, and we gave him, those 5 minutes of air. And I regret that. I really do, because, we always had, the way the show was set up is when History Channel started it, is they had written a script for me, and it said, oh, the Freemasons are coming, they're going to eat your children, I'm worried about the team, they're all in danger. And I'm like, I'm not worried about the team. They have a whole crew of people. The Freemasons are nice guys. I'm the one who got us into their headquarters. I know them. And the History, I said, I'm not saying any of this nonsense. And the History Channel, to their credit, said, what do you want to say? And I said, I want to tell the truth. So the show would kind of give you all these different perspectives, and then I would come on in the end and give you the voice of reason. But I do think it has changed, and I think these books reflect my own personal shift. Certainly, Josh and I on Lost History and Mary all worked to make sure we were telling a true story. On those spooky shows, they told me that the less facts you have, the more scary music you play. Think about that, right? And I have no interest in doing that. I'd much rather, I love that there are 30 pages of footnotes in this book. I love the fact that what we know, we say we know. What we don't know, we say we don't. You're going to see this book at the end. There's questions about this plot that are still unknown. And we present to you both sides of this. We tell you what our conclusion is, but we say, here's where the holes are. And I actually like that much more than a historian who comes and says, this 100% happened, when they can't possibly know 100% what happened. So I do think these books are kind of an evolution of that. Okay. Hey, Steph. By the way, I have to say it because this is my first kiss, Stephanie. That's it. You don't get that, by the way, at any other book signing. So I'm just going to tell you. But if I don't say it, the first time when there was an event, Stephanie stood up, and I said, my wife was here in the front. I said, here's my first kiss and my most recent one. And my wife literally after the event was like, don't make that joke again. But my wife's not here tonight. So I love seeing you, Steph. Yes. And then, by the way, one of my oldest friends on the planet. So.
It's so great to see you, and thank you guys so much for writing these fabulous books that we could share with our kids. You mentioned that you came across this story, sort of an idea, or you came across this conspiracy, and then you developed this research and this book about it. Where did you come across this?
Yeah, this is where I credit the algorithm. right? My algorithm knows I like obscure history stuff, and I remember seeing it. You remember the article when I sent it to you? It was like,
Yeah.
it was like this. I'm not joking. I think it was like a Yahoo article, like something as basic as that. And Yahoo just served up to me and said, "Oh, plot to such and such," and I was like, "What? What is that?" And it was just like a People magazine story. Like it was nothing. And I just didn't see any books that I, at the time that were out on it. There was nothing that seemed interesting, and went to Bob and said, "What do you think?" And we were like, "That's where it goes." But again, I don't credit the algorithm for much, but when you see your algorithm on Instagram, it does know you. You think it doesn't, but what it's trying to sell you does know you, and mine just knows I tend to like it. And listen, honestly, Steph, like 99% of it is nonsense, right? We go through so many different plots with each book. Even the Lincoln book, I remember we had like 3 different plots, I think it was, that we were looking at, and we were like, this one's okay, this one doesn't really have facts behind it, this one's, and you kind of got to find the right one that it has a story behind it and that you can put your facts behind it. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, well, and in this case, if you were to sort of Google the story of this plot that we tell in the book, you'll immediately find a ton of information, and almost all of it is incorrect. It's just, for some reason, this story, more than most other stories from history, is just full of controversy and speculation and misinformation, and it's very, very hard to sift through it all and try to figure out, what of all this information has any basis in fact. And that was part of the fun of it as well. Is it's kind of a detective story to try to sift through everything that's out there and try to figure out, some version of the truth, and even come up with our own sense of what we think happened, which took a long time in this case. It doesn't help that a lot of the information, was in the German archives or in the Soviet spy archives, and it's very hard to access. So it added a whole, new layer of complexity and difficulty to the process. But it's also, as I said, part of the fun. So it was really exciting to learn about this story.
I also think what's interesting for the historical context is, because you got to ask yourself, why do we not know this story, right? It's such a cool story. How do you not know it? And one of the things you'll see in the book, this doesn't ruin anything at the end, but it's the Soviets, it's Soviet intelligence that arguably foils this plot, right? Saves the day and comes in and tells the Secret Service, we think there's a threat here on your boss. And when the Cold War happened, the 1960s hit, the Cold War starts peaking, nostalgia for World War II really peaks as well. But when that happens and the Cold War arrives, in America, we don't want to tell stories where the Soviets save the day. That's not a good story for us to tell. And that's where this kind of exaggerated version of the story takes hold and starts telling, oh, the Soviets were, doing this, and you'll see in the book the twists that come on it. And, I always think it's fascinating. Whatever, history is not math. There's not just one answer. There's perspectives. And depending on who you ask, you get a different story. And I love the fact that you get to parse through this and see, if you look through, at this point in time, they're saying this, and at this point in time, they're saying this, but why? Why are all these people fighting about the same kind of bundle of facts? And that becomes the last 50 pages of the book, is us just trying to figure out ourselves who to believe.
I just wanted to piggyback on the question your first kiss asked.
That's it. Perfect.
Did you contact the person that wrote that article? I just was curious
You know,
to
I-
see what
it's
he or
funny,
she
I didn't.
said.
Did you contact them?
No, we never did.
No, it's funny. Because it's a Yahoo article, I don't think. I mean, I'll speak for myself. No offense to it. I love being in Yahoo.
Maybe some Yahoo wrote
No,
it.
but I'm saying, but like, the truth is we, it wasn't. It didn't have like facts behind it. It was just more like this thing happened, and you were like, did it? Is it not? Did it true? But thanks for making me feel bad about not contacting that person. Yes, Mitchell.
Sure. Well, first, nice to see both of you again, and congratulations.
Thank you, pal.
So you read about the story, and what happens after you do research for, I'm sure it's got to take a long time. I don't know how long you would look into it to say, you know what, after all this time, it doesn't make sense to do the book.
Yeah, when we've had that with some of the Lincoln plots. You should talk about that because you always do the first crack.
Yeah, it's difficult because sometimes it takes a while to even know whether you can pursue the story. And, that's time that's important. And so to spend 6 weeks, researching and talking about something only to conclude that it's impossible and there's no way it's going to work, obviously is frustrating. So it is hard to kind of pick your moment when you're ready to commit to a particular story. It's probably true in in every medium in lots of different situations. But so far so good. We haven't ever gone too far down a path to learn that we have to find something else.
I also think Josh. I think Josh was the executive producer of our TV show, and in that job, he was responsible. He was the best writer. I mean, he was incredible on it. But he also has a sense of what made a good show, right? He had to know in that moment how to put together that show. So he obviously I have to go up and be the host, but he's the one who's saying, okay, here's all these lost artifacts. Which ones are going to make the good story? And there's something in your DNA. I hope there's something in my DNA that I know there's something in Bob's DNA that you just kind of, it's like the Supreme Court definition of pornography, which is when you see it, right? Like that's what the Supreme Court defines it as. And you just got to know when you see it what a good story is. And you just are like, and you also know when you're like, something smells about this. I remember there was a Lincoln story. It wasn't that it was bad, but I remember just that we kind of looked at it and concluded like, it's a cool story, but it's not a book. And each one has its own threshold that you have to kind of push for. Yes. As Alex, this is Stephanie's son.
Like my mom said, I really like you've written a lot of books that I like to read. This question isn't necessarily about the Nazi conspiracy book. It's just a book that I have in mind because I want to finish reading the I Am series. How many I Am books are there?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Thank you, Alex, for letting me totally plug completely the other books that we work on. $5 will be in your hand when you come up here. So Chris and I, where are you, Chris? I know you're here somewhere. Wave your hand. Oh, you take in the back row. Look at him, the last seat in the house. Everyone has to turn now. Look at you, which makes Chris horrified because he's completely does not want the attention on him. So let's put the attention on him. This comes out next week. This is I Am John Lewis, and this is the newest book in this series. And Alex, if I had an extra copy, I would give it to you, but I actually need to drag it around. But this is the 32nd book in the series, which is staggering to me. But again, this book was also about a different need we saw. If the Nazi conspiracy is about Josh and I looking and seeing where anti-Semitism was and where we were with authoritarians in the world, this was, Dr. King is a wonderful book. Rosa Parks is a wonderful book. But John Lewis is about getting into good trouble. And Alex, if I can teach you one thing that I know your mother has already taught you, it is don't be afraid to get into good trouble. And John Lewis, what's so great in this book is when John Lewis is growing up, and I'll just talk about this because whatever, you came and all the people that didn't come, we're not going to reward them. Screw them. And I'll tell you what, in fact, Alex, I'm going to tell you, I'm not supposed to. Lori, are you here? Okay, good. Our editor is not here. So she would tell me not to tell you this, and I'm going to totally tell you because she didn't show tonight. She told me she has a doctor's appointment. So now that she missed it, we're going to completely talk behind her back. When John Lewis is young, he grows up at a time where if you're black and someone white is walking toward you on the street, you're supposed to walk and cross the street. And his parents tell him, don't make waves. Like, it's okay, just do that. But his grandmother saw the world differently. And his grandmother used to very politely, but would say, you know what, I'm just going to, respectfully, I'm going to keep walking my way. And he saw what good trouble meant. When you see injustice again, you use your voice and you stand up to it. And I'm going to read you, Alex, because no one has seen this book. It is not out yet, but I'm going to read you the last page of the book because it's just when they ask him, one of the things that John Lewis has to do is stay calm while people are fighting on him, spitting at him, throwing things at him, beating him up. And he says the number one question he used to get is, how do you stay calm in the face of that? And he said the answer was he had to have faith. And faith is making a way out of no way. It's when you believe something so strongly you're going to make a way out of no way. And I love that idea. And John Lewis, I don't know if I've probably never told anyone this, but John Lewis was really supportive of our Ordinary People Change the World series. He actually told me personally how much he loved the Rosa Parks book, so much so that I asked him. He was the advisor on our I Am Martin Luther King Jr. book. And he was so kind to us. He helped us advise the book. And obviously I was so sad he passed away, so we couldn't read this. But his co-writers of March were the ones who helped proof this book with us. But here's the finale of it. It says, I have faith in my dreams. I have faith in this country. I have faith that we can make a way out of no way, and in that I am unshakable. We are one people, we are one family, and now it's time for you to do your part. Stand up, speak up, Alex, be prepared to march. It's your turn now. I am John Lewis. I am never afraid to get into good trouble. And what I'll tell you about the book very quickly, I'm not supposed to tell you this, so I'm just going to ask you, I mean this, don't tell anyone what I'm about to tell you because Lori will be so mad. But so we're coming out with, everyone, you can see on our website, we're doing Temple Grandin comes out in March. Our first autistic hero, which is an incredible book, and Temple Grandin helped us with the book. I got on the phone with her, and she was just so funny to like the way she answers questions, and it's just like, you know, I'm like, do you like seeing yourself in a cartoon? She's like, my shoes are this different color here. I'm like, perfect. And she loved Chris's drawings. And obviously, John Lewis comes out next week. We do I Am Wonder Woman, comes out in October. So we get to finish the trinity of superheroes. But the ones that no one knows about yet, so please don't say anything, is we're doing I Am Mr. Rogers, and we're doing I Am Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So those are the next ones that come after that. So that'll be fun. Okay, we got one more question. Dave Light, yes.
Plot. I heard a lot of. I'll just start over. The way you speak about what you do, I hear things about like story and finding the plot. And you went through 3 different plots for the Lincoln book, and I don't think like John Meacham and Doris Kearns Goodwin and Arthur Schlesinger talk about what they do in the same way. They talk about, you know, themes and social constructs and economics, and you guys talk about, you know, story and plot and character and those kinds of things. And I'm wondering how you see what you do as historians versus what people like that do as historians, and how you see those two things sort of relating to each other and playing off of each other.
Yeah, you can go first.
That's a great question. You know, and it's true. I think Brad and I both think of ourselves as storytellers. We both come from backgrounds that are not sort of traditional academic history backgrounds. Brad has written in a lot of different mediums. I used to work in television and documentary, and we both love telling human stories. And so, you know, in history, nonfiction history writing is a very crowded field. There are a lot of great writers doing a lot of great things. But maybe what Brad and I bring to these books that's a little different is a focus on storytelling that we sort of bring from these other genres and other mediums. And we always try to keep it about the emotional heart of the story, whether that's the individual characters we're following, or even just the emotions of what's happening in the world and what's sort of behind the events. So we try not to get lost in you know, in lots of dates and minutia and facts, and try to keep the focus on sort of the heart of the story. And that means a focus on character and a focus on, you know, what's the feelings that underlie what's happening. At the same time, we can't lose track of the fact that we're writing about history. Everything is very, very closely researched. As Brad said, we have 30 pages of footnotes in this book, endnotes in this book. And a lot of it is we have a lot of facts in the beginning, and then we just pare away things that we don't think are totally essential to the story, and always focus on the characters and the emotion of the story and the storytelling, and give just enough historical context so that you really feel that everything matters. And in this book, you know, we're telling a story about World War II. So many books have been written about World War II. So many vast books have been written about World War II. We didn't try to tell the story of the whole war, but we also felt that we couldn't tell our little story that takes place within the war without setting the larger context, without trying to convey, in some sense, the gravity of what was happening, the stakes of what was happening, the atrocities that were ongoing and that are, you know, just to this day incredibly painful to learn about and read about. So it's finding that right mix of plot and character, these things that we often talk about, but also really what's behind it. What are the real human stakes behind this story, and why does it matter? And put those things together, and that's how we try to write our books.
Yeah, and Dave, I also think it just comes from our own kind of bias in language, which is we got our start as storytellers. So we just use words like plot and character that they would use as like in that kind of more removed way. I think it's just habit more than change. I will hold our books up to any history book out there. John Meacham gave us a blurb on this book, and so did Ken Burns. And they've, you know, every Pulitzer Prize winning author that you can think of has given us a blurb on the other 2 books. And and not because, and I don't say that to say like, look at us, look what we did, but I think every historian that is writing books that are, if you're writing just for the facts, the truth is the books are boring and people don't take to them. But the books that are great, the books that people love, whether it's Meacham's, Meacham is to me the best storyteller of all the historians. And his stories are just like ours in the sense that he goes for that personal touch. You have to meet the person. That's why he writes about, John Lewis, right? He doesn't just write about the civil rights thing. He wants to write about the character of John Lewis. And you finish that feeling like you lived inside his head. And I personally think the best historians get to that point. We just happen to use the terminology because I'm a novelist for 20 years that I'll use the word plot, even though I'm sure my history teachers would say, dope, don't call it a plot, call it history. But I think that's just our bias. Okay, we all done? Let me just say, wait, before we wrap up, a couple things. So there's a kid with a Brad shirt on, so I got to ask him. You got a question? Yell it out.
So how many of the I Am superhero books are there going to be?
There's going to be 3 to start. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman's coming. Okay, when you come up in line, tell me, and I'm going to show you Wonder Woman. Is that cool? Because you got me on your shirt, so I got to, anyone who wears me on their shirt, I love. You got it, my friend. So a couple things. Again, huge thank you to all of you for coming from every parts of Josh's life and my life. I see my childhood sitting in front of me. It's wonderful. And even as I get older, and our professional lives as well. There are people who have cut the line stickers. If you have them and you want to use them, obviously you know how to use them. Come up in front and say you're part of that invisible army, and you'll show them and give them the password. But most important, thank you for supporting this little dream that Josh and I have. It is more meaningful than we can express, and I think this book especially, the books are oddly getting more personal for us. I think, we get to take on different things that are happening in the universe, and I love the fact that I get to do this with you, Josh. Josh and I will do a couple other events together. We do another one in Maryland at the end of in Virginia at the end of the week. But I never get to say in front of all the people that he knows, this is a special person, and I thank you for sharing him with us. I thank you all for joining us tonight, and a huge thank you to Barnes & Noble for hosting us, being the host with the most. But I love the fact that you joined us down here in Tribeca. We've only done one other event here, and thank you for filling the place and making us feel so at home. It means more than we can express. So thanks again. We appreciate it.